As it is right now, the industry is a complete mess. And as the years go by, it only really seems to get worse and worse. What's poppin', everybody? Today we're going to be talking about something that I've kind of wanted to talk about on this channel for a long time now, and it's Hollywood, or just the industry as it is. Because quite frankly, it is a cesspool right now. But I do think there's still some hope to redeem it. For starters, let's assess the problems here. Probably the biggest one that you probably heard all over the news is the actors and writers strike. To see the overall response from writers and directors and actors is honestly just super inspiring to see them all stand together like that. And it is nice to see that they are truly fighting for a cause they fully believe in. But the way the industry overall is responding is kind of unsettling. With stuff going along the lines of that one anonymous executive, which stated, "Allow things to drag on until union members start losing their apartments and losing their houses." What the fuck? Which is really disturbing. To go as far as to do something like that is kinda awful, and they don't seem to be wanting to resume any talks until later in the fall. It's interesting because whenever I see a writer and actor strike post, I always see comments go along the lines of this: "A big name actor just wants another zero added to their paycheck," or "I guess 7 figures isn't enough for you." And while yes, there are actors and writers who can live more comfortably, that's not really the case for a majority of these actors. Let me point your attention to something. The writers who are on this strike don't really have a face or as much of a presence as, let's say, Mario Robbie or Robert Downey Jr. While those are more respected and much more known names, most writers just don't have that same presence as most of these superstars do. Not only that, but a good majority of these actors on the strike are just background actors and don't get paid that much. They are a lot more in line to the common people than you would think. And I feel like people might have this false perception that if you're an actor, you're just big shot with a lot of money. That's not the case. Background actors really don't get paid a whole lot, but they do it because they have a passion for the arts. And the same goes for the writers, but even to a lesser degree, where their face is just never shown. Not to mention with things like streaming services that often cut off seasons of shows a lot shorter, it's a lot harder to keep a consistent living as an actor or a writer. And don't even get me started on the CGI workforce, because God knows they are treated like actual shit. Having to pull off long crunches, and given overall unexpected deadlines and draft changes, they have harsh working conditions. Or in a recent example, take a look at the Across the Spider-Verse team. Their description of their overall journey on this project didn't really seem that fun, and a lot of animators ended up leaving the project earlier. Not to mention, Sony even announced a 2024 release date, which is basically impossible. Unless these animators just don't eat and never go home, there's no way they would ever be able to push out a 2024 release date. And thankfully, there's an undecided date now, but I mean, the audacity to even do something like that is just beyond me. And then there was the rough start to the summer overall, with the 4 major flops of the summer: Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, The Flash, Ruby Gillman Teenage Kraken, and Elementals, which is barely now starting to make back all of its profit. Which is good, but it's interesting to see these 4 movies, which are probably from the biggest studios out there, flopped so badly initially. Now, I'm gonna give credit to the animated features where credit is due, and they did try and do something different and a little bit more innovative, and I can respect it for that. But as for Indiana Jones and The Flash, I mean, just look at them. One just looked like another sequel that nobody wanted to see, and the other was trying to revive a dead horse. Nobody cares for the DC Cinematic Universe at this point. It's gone. Not to mention, you keep Ezra Miller on board on that project. What's your thought process there? But there was a bit of a turnaround in the summer for Barbie and Oppenheimer, which actually creates probably one of the most interesting discussions of this video. Now, I believe Barbie and Oppenheimer would have done extremely well no matter the circumstances. Even if they weren't released on the same day, I think both of them were just overall very interesting films that the people really wanted to see. And that's a good driving factor. Probably the most important factor of any movie. You have to make it interesting for the viewers. But the Barbenheimer trend was something that nobody expected, but grew so naturally that it just became its own phenomenon, and further boosted the success of these movies, having an extremely strong opening weekend overall that was something kind of unseen post-pandemic. People were coming to the theater, and the theater was packed to the brim for people to just watch this movie. Something that I haven't really seen in a while Well, since Endgame, really. That was kind of the last time I had ever seen so much hype buzzed around a certain movie. Or, I guess, movies. But what's real interesting is just how the studios responded to this Barbenheimer trend. Now, some studios are trying to artificially develop a whole new double feature trend. Probably the most recent one that comes to mind is the upcoming Saw 10 movie and the new freaking Paw Patrol movie, which has Kim Kardashian for some reason, who's playing Kim Kardashian for some reason. But you can tell this is just some artificial trend that the studios want to do to bank off the success of Barbenheimer. Hell, there's even one for the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie in the Meg for some reason. But what I think that they don't understand is that there was a real drive to see Oppenheimer and Barbie, whereas there's just not as much of it when it comes to these films. Not saying that they're bad, but when studios try to make this artificial hype, it doesn't really end well. Kinda just turns people off instead. And what I believe to be on top of all this is just that movies are lacking some originality nowadays. Don't get me wrong, there are some really great gems out there that are just so worth every penny to watch, but there is just such an influx of mediocre films out there that it's really hard to find the good stuff nowadays. You could tell Marvel is now banking off of the name alone and the IP rather than the story that's being told. I mean, seriously, who's that excited for the Marvels? And like I already mentioned, trends in Hollywood, although are no new thing, have been especially prevalent with stuff like the multiverse, and now the Barbenheimer trend to just have every double feature be like a polar opposite of the last. And what especially sucks is that it's so hard for younger filmmakers to just make their name be pushed out there. It's hard to make a name for yourself now. More so than ever. In a world that is dominated by huge IPs and blockbusters, it's nearly impossible to get a simple passion project out there in the works, let alone even have enough money to promote that thing. But there is some of an upside to all this. For starters, I think the whole writers and actors strike has had a huge impact on the overall quality of the industry. A lot of movies have either been delayed or even just outright scrapped, which is a definite way of showing some amount of power. And with much more recognizable faces joining the party, it's a lot harder to just ignore now. Like in the London premiere of Oppenheimer, the cast just left to go join the strike, which is nice to see just how supportive these actors are of their fellow actors and artists. And now that the studios have less of a grasp on what they can do now, it feels like it's only a matter of time before they have to wave the white flag and finally make some fair agreements with the actors and writers. But really, only time can tell just how much the industry will change, hopefully in favor of the actors and writers, but I guess we just have to wait and see. Now, I think the industry overall suffering is going to be a good thing, because it's going to lead to some drastic changes on how things are going to be done. And that could very well just be a huge plus. People are so tired of these mediocre shows and movies, and these corporate trends that just feel so soulless and unnatural. I hope that if this trend of a decline for Hollywood continues, that there is a huge wake-up call on some of the executives and they just realize, hey, maybe we shouldn't screw up our whole industry. But hey, I'm eager to think of what you guys think about all this in the comments and what you think of the writers-actors strike, or any other topics I mentioned in this video. And if you like this video, consider subscribing. It's free and it helps out a ton for the channel. And hey, if you want to hear more about CGI, especially in terms of Marvel and how the quality is dipping, watch the video on the left. And if you want to watch my latest video, watch it on the right. And I'll catch you all later.